I never believed in ghosts, not until I moved into the house on Elm Ridge Lane. It was October when I signed the lease. The realtor, a thin woman with nervous eyes, kept glancing at the walls as she handed me the keys. She said the previous tenant had left suddenly, no forwarding address, but the rent was half the market rate for a 3-bedroom Victorian in such good condition. I didn't ask questions. I needed a fresh start after the divorce, somewhere quiet to finish my novel. The house welcomed me with silence, beautiful silence. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, crown molding that looked hand-carved. The walls were painted a soft eggshell white, clean and bright. I remember standing in the foyer that first afternoon, suitcase at my feet, thinking, this is perfect. That night, I heard the first echo. I was in the kitchen making tea when it came, a soft murmur, like someone speaking in the next room. Not words, just the rise and fall of a voice. I froze, kettle in hand. The house was empty. I checked every door, every window, locked. I even went upstairs and opened the attic hatch. Nothing. I told myself it was the pipes. Old houses make noises. I went to bed. The second night, the murmur returned. This time it was clearer, closer. It seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. I pressed my ear to the plaster in the hallway. The voice was feminine, low, almost melodic. She was saying something repetitive, like a lullaby or a prayer. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sad, pleading. I laughed it off in the morning. Sleep deprivation, stress, imagination. But on the third night, she spoke my name. I was in the living room, laptop open, trying to write. The house was dark, except for the glow of the screen. Around midnight, the temperature dropped suddenly. My breath fogged. Then, from the wall behind the sofa, directly behind my head, the voice whispered, "Emma." I spun around. Nothing, just smooth white paint. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would crack a rib. I slept with the lights on after that. By the end of the first week, the voice was constant, not loud, never loud, but always there, threading through the quiet moments. When I showered, she hummed in the steam. When I cooked, she murmured over the sizzle of onions. When I tried to write, she repeated fragments of sentences I had just typed, as if reading over my shoulder. I started recording on my phone. The microphone picked up nothing, only my own breathing, my own footsteps. The voice existed only for me. I researched the house. Public records showed it had been built in 1892 by a doctor named Elias Whitcomb. He lived there with his wife, Clara, and their infant daughter. In 1896, Clara vanished. No body was ever found. Elias sold the house shortly after and moved away. There were no newspaper articles about foul play, just a small notice of a missing person. I found Clara's name in an old census. Clara Whitcomb, age 28. Cause of death listed in a later record, unknown. I told myself that was coincidence. One night, I woke to the sound of crying, real crying, wet, choking sobs coming from the wall beside my bed. I sat up, heart racing. The crying stopped the moment I moved. Then the voice began again, clearer than ever. "He put me in here, Emma. He put me in the walls." I screamed. I don't remember getting out of bed, but suddenly I was in the hallway, flipping on every light. The crying didn't return. The next day, I called a friend, Sarah, the only person I'd told about moving. I put her on speaker while I paced the kitchen. "There's a voice," I said. "A woman. She knows my name." Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then, "Get out of that house, Em, right now." "I can't. The lease." "Break it. I'll help you pay the penalty. Just leave." But I didn't leave. Part of me, the stubborn, curious writer part, wanted to know more, needed to know. That night, I spoke back. I stood in the upstairs hallway, directly in front of the wall where the voice was strongest. "Clara?" I said. My voice shook. "Is that you?" Silence. Then, so softly I almost missed it. "Yes." My knees buckled. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. "What happened to you?" A pause. Then the voice threaded with grief. "He said I was mad. He said I would hurt the baby. He gave me laudanum, so much. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then he opened the wall and put me inside." I covered my mouth to keep from vomiting. "I've been here ever since, Emma, waiting for someone to hear." I started sleeping downstairs on the couch. I avoided the upstairs entirely, but the voice followed. It was in every wall now. Sometimes she sang. Sometimes she begged. Sometimes she just repeated my name over and over, like a child calling for its mother. I stopped writing. I barely ate. I lost weight. My reflection looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, gray skin. One evening, I came home from the grocery store to find the hallway wall scratched, deep gouges in the plaster, as if made by nails. In the center, carved crookedly, "Help me out." I dropped the bags and ran. I drove to a motel 40 miles away. I didn't take anything with me, I just left. But the voice came with me. In the motel room, thin walls, traffic noise, she was there. Faint, but unmistakable. "Emma, don't leave me." I checked out at 3 a.m. and drove to Sarah's apartment. I slept on her couch for a week. The voice faded to almost nothing. I thought maybe it was over. Then, Sarah asked me to house sit while she went on a business trip, just one night. Her cat needed feeding. I said yes. I thought I was strong enough. Sarah's apartment was modern, open plan, thin drywall. I fed the cat, watched TV, went to bed early. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching, slow, deliberate scratching inside the wall above the guest bed. Then the voice, clear, close, intimate. "You can't run from walls, Emma. Walls are everywhere." I moved back into the house on Elm Ridge Lane. I don't know why. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe curiosity had turned into something darker. Maybe part of me wanted to finish the story. I bought tools, a hammer, a pry bar, dusk masks. I told myself I was going to find her, prove it, or free her. I started in the upstairs hallway, the place where the voice was strongest. The first swing of the sledgehammer felt good. Plaster exploded in a white cloud. I hit again and again, opening a ragged hole. The wood lath was dark with age. I pried it away in strips. The smell hit me first. Sweet, rotten, ancient. Then I saw the hair. Long black hair, tangled and dusty, caught in the splintered wood. I dropped the pry bar. I kept going. I tore out 3 sections of wall before I found her. She was sitting, knees drawn to chest, arms wrapped around them. The dress had rotted to threads, but the fabric was still pale blue. Her skin was leather over bone. Her head was bowed, face hidden by that curtain of hair. But she was small, too small. Not a woman, a child. I stumbled back, gagging. The skull was no bigger than a cantaloupe, the bones delicate, bird-like. I ran downstairs and vomited in the kitchen sink. When I could stand again, I went back up. The voice was silent.
I called the police. They came. They photographed. They took the remains in a small black bag. The medical examiner said the child had been approximately 6 months old, female. Cause of death undetermined, but there were healed fractures in the tiny arms, old bruises fossilized into bone. No adult remains were found in any wall. The house was condemned pending investigation. I was questioned for hours. They thought I put the baby there. I couldn't explain how I knew exactly to look. They let me go. Lack of evidence. I moved again, this time to a high-rise apartment, 20th floor, concrete and steel, no plaster walls, no history. For months there was silence.
My grandfather used to say that some lights aren't meant to guide you home. Some lights are meant to lead you away. I didn't believe him until the night I followed the lantern. I grew up in a small coastal town called Black Harbor, tucked into the jagged edge of northern Maine, the kind of place where fog rolls in thick enough to swallow sound and the ocean never stops talking. My family had fished those waters for generations, but by the time I was born, the catches had dwindled and most of the boats sat rotting at the docks. Granddad was the last real fisherman in our line. He kept going out long after it made sense, long after the rest of us begged him to stop. He'd come back at dawn with empty nets and wild eyes, muttering about lights he'd seen out past the breakers. "Not lighthouses," he'd say, voice low. "Something older, something that walks on the water." We thought it was dementia, the salt and solitude eating away at his mind. He died in the winter of my 23rd year, heart attack on the boat, alone. They found him slumped over the wheel, staring out at a sea so calm it looked like glass. In his logbook, the last entry read, "It came close tonight, held the lantern right up to the hull. I saw its face." I inherited the boat, a 30-foot lobster trawler named Mercy. I didn't want it, but I couldn't bring myself to sell. Instead, I fixed her up, painted her hull fresh white, and started running charter trips for tourists who wanted to see whales or puffins. Safe, shallow waters, nothing like what Granddad did. The first time I saw the lantern was 3 years later, in early September. I'd taken a group of bird watchers out past the islands. We'd had a good day, puffins diving, seals basking on the rocks. By dusk, the clients were happy and tipsy on the cheap wine they'd brought. I turned Mercy toward home. That's when the fog came in. Not the usual slow creep. This was sudden, violent. One minute the sky was clear enough to see the first stars. The next we were blind. The radar went haywire, ghost images flickering across the screen. The GPS lost signal. Even the compass spun lazily, like it couldn't decide which way was north. I killed the engines to avoid hitting rocks and told everyone to stay calm. I'd been in fog before, it passes. But this fog didn't pass. Hours went by. The clients grew quiet, then scared. One woman started crying. I went out on deck with a spotlight, sweeping the gray wall around us. Nothing but water and mist. Then I saw it. A light. Not bright, not like a boat or a buoy. This was soft, golden, bobbing gently about 200 yards off the starboard bow. It moved with purpose, back and forth, like someone walking along a path. A lantern. I felt it in my gut first, a cold twist like swallowing ice water. Then recognition, Granddad's stories. I told myself it was another boat, lost like us. I started the engines and eased toward it. The clients protested, but I didn't listen. I needed to know. As we got closer, the light stopped moving. It just waited. I cut the engines again. The fog seemed to thicken around us, pressing in. The air smelled wrong. Briny, yes, but underneath it something sweet and rotten, like low tide mixed with lilies left too long in a vase. I called out, "Ahoy! You need help?" No answer, just the gentle sway of the lantern. I grabbed the spotlight and aimed it directly at the light. For a second, the beam caught something, a figure, tall, thin, draped in dark cloth that clung wetly to its body. The lantern hung from a long pole, raised high. Its face, I don't want to describe its face. The light winked out. The fog lifted as suddenly as it had come. Stars overhead, the harbor lights twinkling 5 miles away. Radar clear, GPS solid. We motored home in silence. That night, I dreamed of the lantern. I was walking on the water, barefoot, the cold sea lapping at my ankles. The figure was ahead of me, lantern swinging. I followed because I had to, because something in the light called my name in a voice that wasn't sound but feeling. I woke up soaked in sweat. I didn't go out on the boat for a week. But Black Harbor is small. People talk. The clients told their story at the diner, at the bar. Soon everyone knew I'd seen the lantern bearer. Old-timers nodded like they'd been waiting for it. Young people laughed it off. My mother called. She hadn't spoken to me much since Granddad's funeral. "Don't go chasing lights, Daniel," she said. "Your grandfather did, and it took him." I asked her what she meant. She hung up. I tried to go back to normal, took shorter trips, stayed in sight of land, but every time the fog rolled in, even a little, I scanned the horizon for that golden glow. I didn't see it again for 2 months. Then, on the night of the new moon in November, I saw it from shore. I was walking the cliffs above town, trying to clear my head after a bad fight with my girlfriend. She wanted me to sell the boat, move inland. I couldn't. The fog was thin that night, more mist than blanket. The sea was black glass. And there it was, far out, beyond the breakers, the lantern moving steadily parallel to the shore, back and forth, back and forth. I don't remember deciding to follow. I just found myself climbing down the rocky path to the beach. The lantern kept pace with me, always the same distance out. When I reached the sand, it stopped, waited. I stood there for a long time. Waves hissed around my boots. Then I stepped into the water. It was freezing, so cold it burned, but I kept going, knee-deep, waist-deep. The lantern began moving again, leading me out. I don't know how far I walked. The water never went over my head. It was like the sea made a path for me, solid enough to stand on, but wet and shifting. The figure never turned around. We walked for hours or minutes. Time felt wrong. Eventually, the lantern stopped. We were surrounded by fog again, but different, thicker, older. The air tasted metallic. The figure turned. Its face was wrong in ways I can't name. Not monstrous exactly, more like unfinished, like something that had tried to wear a human shape and given up halfway. It raised the lantern higher. Inside the glass, the flame wasn't fire. It was faces, hundreds of them, tiny and translucent, swirling in the glow, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide. I recognized some. Granddad was there, eyes locked on mine. Then others, people from town who'd gone missing over the years. A boy who drowned in '89, a woman who walked into the sea in 2003, fishermen lost in storms, all of them trapped in the light. The figure extended the lantern toward me, an invitation. I understood then. The lantern bearer doesn't take you by force, it offers, and if you follow far enough, you accept. I turned and ran. The path was gone. I sank into deep water, cold closing over my head. I thrashed, lungs burning, certain I would drown. Then hands grabbed me, real hands, strong, human. They dragged me back to shore. I woke on the beach at dawn, covered in seaweed. A park ranger stood over me, radioing for help. He said he'd seen me walking into the surf from the cliffs and came running. I never saw the lantern again, but I still dream of it. And sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in thick and the town goes quiet, I hear it, not with my ears, with something deeper, a soft glow at the edge of thought, calling my name. I sold the boat the next spring, moved inland like my girlfriend wanted, got a job fixing engines at a garage 2 hours from the coast.
I thought distance would help. It didn't. Last week, I was driving home from a late shift. Rural road, no streetlights, fog thick as soup. My headlights caught something ahead. A figure walking in the middle of the road. Tall, thin, carrying a lantern. I slammed on the brakes. When the car stopped, the figure was gone. But the glow remained, soft, golden, drifting off into the trees, leading away from the road, away from home, away from everything. I sit here now, writing this down, because I need someone to know. The lantern bearer isn't bound to the sea. It goes where the lost are, and I've been lost since the night I first followed. I can feel it getting closer. Some nights I wake up standing at the door, hand on the knob, barefoot, ready to walk. I don't know how much longer I can resist. If you live near water, or fog, or lonely roads, if you ever see a lantern in the dark, don't follow. Turn around, run, because once it knows your name, it will come for you, anywhere. And the light never goes out.
I am not allowed to leave the room with the mirrors. That is the only rule I remember clearly now. My name is Lydia Voss. I am, or was, an art restorer. I specialize in antique frames and gilded surfaces. Mirrors are my favorite. There is something honest about a mirror that has survived centuries. It shows you exactly what time has done to it. Spots, cracks, silvering gone black in places. Beautiful decay. That's why I answered the ad. It appeared on a private restoration forum last March. No client name, just an anonymous post. Seeking expert for urgent mirror conservation. Single room, 12 antique mirrors. Remote estate, full board provided. Payment generous. Discretion required. 1 month commitment. No visitors. No photographs. The pay was triple my usual rate. I was between jobs, freshly single, and tired of my tiny apartment. I emailed. They replied within minutes with a contract and a train ticket to a town I'd never heard of in upstate New York. The estate was called Harrogate, a sprawling Gothic pile half swallowed by forest. The driver who picked me up from the station said nothing the entire hour-long drive. When we arrived, an elderly housekeeper met me at the door, took my phone for safekeeping, and led me inside. She brought me straight to the mirror room. It was on the 3rd floor, at the end of a long corridor. Double doors, black wood, no handle on the inside. She opened them with a key from her ring. The room was octagonal, windowless, lit by a single chandelier that flickered like gaslight, though I later learned it was electric. The walls, every wall, were covered floor to ceiling in mirrors. 12 of them, as promised, each one different. Some tall and narrow, some round, some convex. Frames ornate with cherubs, vines, skulls, all old, all exquisite. In the center of the room stood a small work table, already laid out with my tools, solvents, cotton swabs, soft brushes, gold leaf, magnifying lamp. A narrow cot was pushed against one wall, a tiny bathroom adjoined through a side door. "This is where you'll work and sleep," the housekeeper said. Her voice was dry as dead leaves. "Meals will be brought 3 times a day. You are not to leave this room until the work is complete." I laughed. "A month locked in here? That wasn't in the contract." She didn't smile. "The mirrors are fragile. The air in the rest of the house is wrong for them. You signed the contract, Miss Voss." She left. The doors closed. I heard the lock turn. I told myself it was eccentric, not insane. Rich people do strange things to protect their collections. I started work the next morning. The mirrors were in worse condition than I expected. The silvering was diseased, black veins spreading from the edges inward like frost. Some had deep scratches that looked deliberate. One had a crack running straight through the center, as though something had punched it from the other side. But the strangest thing was the reflections. At first, I thought it was the age of the glass, ripples, distortions. But the more I looked, the more wrong they felt. In the tall Venetian mirror on the east wall, my reflection lagged, just a fraction of a second. I'd raise my hand, the image would follow half a beat later. In the convex mirror opposite, my face bulged grotesquely, but the eyes stayed normal size, too large, too sharp, watching. I cleaned anyway. Hours blurred into days. The chandelier never seemed to dim. I lost track of night and day. Meals appeared on a tray slid through a slot in the door. I never saw who brought them. By the end of the first week, I started talking to my reflections just to hear a human voice. "You're looking tired, Lydia," I'd say to the version of me in the round mirror with the ebony frame. She'd smile a little too wide. On the 10th day, I noticed something in the background of one of the mirrors. I was cleaning a small oval hand mirror with a mother-of-pearl handle. As I wiped away centuries of grime, the glass cleared, and behind my reflection, over my shoulder, I saw the room. But the cot was occupied. Someone lay on it, a woman in a white nightgown, face turned away. I spun around. The cot was empty. Of course it was. I looked back at the mirror. The woman was still there. Now she was sitting up, head turning slowly toward me. I dropped the mirror. It didn't break. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched. The mirrors gleamed in the chandelier light like wet eyes. I started covering them with sheets from the cot, one by one, but there were only 2 sheets and 12 mirrors. The uncovered ones watched harder. On the 15th day, the reflections stopped mimicking me entirely. I stood in the center of the room, arms at my sides. Every version of me in every mirror did something different. One brushed her hair. One pressed her palms to the glass from inside. One wept silently. One smiled with too many teeth. I screamed until my throat bled. No one came. I tried the doors. Locked. The bathroom had no window. The ventilation grate was too small to crawl through. I was trapped with them. With myself, but not myself. On the 20th day, I started seeing other people in the mirrors. Not just the woman in white, others. A man in old-fashioned clothes hanging from the chandelier, neck stretched impossibly long. A child with black holes for eyes standing directly behind me. A version of me with no face, just smooth skin where features should be. I stopped looking directly into the glass. I worked with my back to the mirrors, cleaning by feel. But I could still see them in my peripheral vision, always moving, always closer. One morning, I woke to find words scratched on the work table. They are hungry. I didn't write them. I started sleeping under the table. The hunger, I learned, was for reality, for the space I occupied. I realized this when I caught one of my reflections eating. She was on her knees, scooping something soft and red from the floor. When she looked up, her mouth was full, chewing. There was nothing on the floor in my reality, but in hers there was plenty. I stopped eating the trays of food. I was afraid it would make me more substantial to them. I grew thin.
My skin took on the same gray sheen as old silver. On the 25th day, the mirrors began to bleed. Not dramatically, just a slow seep from the edges of the glass, dark red tracking down the glass like tears. The smell was copper and roses. I sat in the center of the room and waited for the end of the month, for someone to unlock the door. The contract said 1 month, but time had stopped making sense. I counted meals, I counted bleeds, I counted heartbeats. Then, one day or night, the chandelier went out. Total darkness. I curled into a ball under the table, waiting for light. Instead, I heard breathing. Not mine. All around me, wet, close. Then a whisper from every direction at once, in my own voice. Trade places. I screamed again. The lights flickered back on. Every mirror was empty, no reflections at all, just the room behind me, duplicated 12 times. And in each duplicate, something stood where I should have been. They were me, but wrong. Skin peeled back in strips, eyes missing or too many, mouths sewn shut or split to the ears. They pressed against the glass, fingers sliding through like smoke, reaching. I ran to the doors and pounded until my hands bled. They didn't open. I turned back. The mirrors were full again, but now they showed only one thing. Me, standing in the center of the room, facing away, while behind that me, the things began to step out of the glass, 1 foot, then another, dripping. I looked down at my own feet. I wasn't standing. I was still on the floor under the table, but in the mirrors, I was.
I didn't believe in demons until one moved into my body. It started with the eviction notice. I'd been living in the same 1-bedroom apartment in Chicago for 7 years. Rent-controlled, south-facing windows, creaky radiator that sounded like an old man complaining. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then the building sold. New owners wanted market rates. I had 30 days. I spent weeks searching for something affordable in the city. Nothing. Friends offered couches. My sister in Portland said, "Come west." I didn't want to leave. Then I found the listing on a local Facebook group. Studio apartment, $400 month, utilities included, no lease, month to month, immediate move-in. Address in Pilsen. Photos showed a clean, narrow space with exposed brick, high ceilings, fresh paint. Too good to be true. The landlord's name was Mr. Kovac. He met me on the stoop, an old man in a wool coat despite the August heat. His English was careful, accented. "Previous tenant left suddenly," he said. "Very clean. You like?" I liked. I paid first month cash. He handed me a single brass key and left without another word. I moved in the next day. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a narrow brick walk-up. 1 main room, a small kitchenette, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The windows looked out over an alley. Quiet. The brick wall opposite the bed had a faint stain, dark, irregular, like someone had tried to scrub something away and given up. That first night, I slept better than I had in months. The second night, I woke up speaking, not English. The words poured out of me, low, guttural, rolling like stones. I sat bolt upright in bed, mouth moving without my permission. My voice, but deeper, older, angry. I clamped both hands over my mouth. The words stopped. I turned on every light, checked the locks. Nothing. I told myself it was a night terror, stress. I'd read about people speaking in tongues during sleep paralysis. That had to be it. The third night, it happened again. This time, I was standing. I came to awareness in the kitchenette, barefoot on cold tile. My hands were wet. The faucet was running.
I was holding a paring knife under the stream, watching the water turn pink as it rinsed a thin cut on my thumb. I didn't feel the cut. I dropped the knife and backed away until I hit the wall. The cut was shallow, barely bleeding, but I didn't remember picking up the knife, didn't remember turning on the water. I wrapped my thumb in a paper towel and sat on the bed until sunrise. I started keeping a notebook. Day 4. Woke up at 3:13 a.m. with charcoal on my fingers. Found a sketch on the floor, done on the back of the eviction notice. A face, horned, mouth open in a scream. Not my style. I don't draw. Day 5. Found the word rent scratched into the bathroom mirror with what looked like a fingernail, deep grooves. My fingernails were short, clean, no breaks. Day 6. Heard knocking inside the walls, slow, deliberate. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, like someone asking to be let out or in. I called in sick to work. I barely left the apartment anymore. I researched the building. Cook County records showed it had been a boarding house in the 1920s. In 1927, a tenant named Elias Morrow killed himself in what was now my unit, slit his wrists in the bathtub, left a note in Latin, non est meus corpus, which means, this is no longer my body. The landlord at the time claimed Morrow had been speaking in strange voices for weeks before he died. I laughed when I read it, hysterical laughter that turned into sobbing. That night, the voice spoke clearly for the first time. I was brushing my teeth, the mirror fogged from the hot water. Then letters appeared, written from the other side. Let me pay what I owe. I stumbled backward. The letters faded. Then my mouth opened. Let me pay, I said. My voice, but layered, like 2 people speaking at once. I was interrupted. The rent is still due. I ran out of the apartment, spent the night in a 24-hour diner, drinking coffee until my heart rattled. When I came back at dawn, everything looked normal, but I knew it wasn't. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, called my sister, booked a bus ticket to Portland for the next morning. That night, I lost time. I remember sitting on the bed, staring at the brick wall. Next thing I knew, it was 4:47 a.m. The bus had left an hour ago. My bag was unpacked, clothes folded neatly. My bus ticket was burning in the sink. I hadn't lit the match. I started fighting it. I played music constantly, loud, anything to drown out silence where it could speak. I taped crosses above the doorways. Ridiculous, I'm not even religious. I burned sage until the smoke alarm screamed. Nothing helped. It grew stronger. I'd catch myself doing things, standing at the window for hours, staring at passers-by, whispering names I didn't know, writing in the notebook in a language I couldn't read. My reflection began to lag, just like in old mirrors. I'd blink, it wouldn't. I'd smile, it wouldn't. One night, I woke to find myself naked in the bathtub, water running red, shallow cuts on both arm lengths, parallel lines, precise, not deep enough to kill, just enough to bleed. I wrapped them and cried until I passed out. The next morning, the cuts were scabbed over, healing too fast. I called Mr. Kovac. He answered on the first ring. I need to leave, I said. Something's wrong here. A long pause. You signed month to month, he said quietly, but the previous tenant, he tried to leave early too. What happened to him? Another pause. He paid what he owed. The line went dead. I stopped sleeping. I sat in the center of the room with every light on, staring at the door, waiting for it to take full control. It spoke more often now, through my mouth, through the walls, through the pipes, always the same thing. The debt must be paid in blood, one body for one tenancy, eternal. I realized what it wanted, not my death, my permission, a permanent tenant. I fought for 10 more days.
I lost weight, my eyes sunk, my skin turned translucent. I stopped recognizing my own voice. On the last night, I remember being fully myself. I sat on the floor with the paring knife. I thought about ending it on my terms, but it whispered, "If you die, I leave with you. I ride your soul down. We share forever." I dropped the knife. I understood then. The only way out was to give it what it wanted, but not me, someone else. I left the apartment for the first time in weeks, walked to the corner bar, found a man drinking alone, lonely, lost job, lost wife, easy to talk to. I bought him drinks, told him about my amazing cheap studio, said the landlord was looking for a new tenant, gave him the address, told Mr. Kovac preferred cash. He moved in the next day. I watched from across the street as he carried boxes up the stairs. That night, I slept in a motel. For the first time in weeks, silence, no voices, no lost time. I checked out the next morning and took the train to Portland. I've been here 6 months now. I have a new job, new apartment, a new life. I don't speak of Chicago, but sometimes, late at night, I feel it, a faint tug, like something checking the lease, making sure I remember. I looked up the old address online last week. The listing is back up. Studio apartment, $400 a month, immediate move-in. The photo shows the brick wall. The stain is darker now, fresh. I close the tab, but I know it's waiting for the next tenant who needs a cheap place, who's desperate enough, who doesn't ask questions. If you're listening to this and you're looking for somewhere affordable, don't answer that ad. Don't take that key, because the rent here isn't paid in money, and once you move in, you never really move out. It just finds a new address, and the debt is always due.
I never wanted anything from my family. Not the name, not the stories, certainly not the house. But when Aunt Evelyn died last year, the lawyer's letter arrived anyway. You are the last direct descendant of Evelyn Marie Harrow. The estate, including the Harrow family home and all its contents, passes to you. No other heirs, no contest permitted. I almost threw the letter away. I hadn't seen Evelyn since I was 8, 25 years ago. She was my mother's older sister, the one who stayed behind when Mom fled that crumbling Victorian in rural Pennsylvania and never looked back. Mom died when I was 15, taking whatever secrets she carried to the grave. Evelyn never reached out, not once. Yet here I was, sole heir to a house I barely remembered and everything in it. The lawyer added a handwritten note. Ms. Harrow was very clear. The house must remain in the family. She asked that you come in person to receive one item she left specifically for you. Curiosity won. Or maybe guilt, or the fact that I'd just lost my job and had nothing else pulling me anywhere. I drove out in early November, the leaves already gone, the fields gray and skeletal. The house stood at the end of a long gravel drive, 3 stories of sagging porches and blackened brick. It looked smaller than I remembered, but heavier, like the roof carried more than shingles. The lawyer met me on the steps, a thin man in a cheap suit, eyes darting to the upper windows as if expecting someone to watch. Everything's yours, he said, handing me a ring of old keys. Furniture, books, personal effects. I've already removed the financial papers. The rest is untouched since the day she died. What day was that? I asked. He hesitated. October 31st. She was 93, natural causes according to the coroner. He left quickly, tires spitting gravel. I stepped inside. The air was thick, dust, old paper, something metallic underneath. The foyer was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, a grandfather clock frozen at 3:17, a chandelier draped in cobwebs. My footsteps echoed too loudly. I spent the first day wandering room to room, cataloging what could be sold, what could be donated, what should be burned. Most of it fell into the last category. The house was a museum of hoarding, stacks of yellowed newspapers, shelves of cracked porcelain dolls, boxes of unlabeled photographs. In the late afternoon, I found the music box. It was in Evelyn's bedroom on the second floor, sitting alone on a lace doily atop the dresser. Small, walnut wood, inlaid with mother of pearl in the shape of a weeping willow. The lid was carved with a scene, a woman in Victorian dress standing at a grave, one hand reaching toward a child half buried in the earth. I'd seen it before, in dreams maybe, or in that single childhood visit. I opened it. Inside, red velvet lining worn thin, a tiny brass cylinder and comb. No dancer, no figurine, just the mechanism. I wound the key on the bottom. It played a slow minor key lullaby, 8 notes repeating. Simple, haunting. Something loosened in my chest when I heard it. Recognition or relief, I couldn't tell. Taped inside the lid was a folded note in Evelyn's spidery handwriting. For Clara's last living daughter, play it when the time comes. Finish what we started. I closed the lid. That night I slept in one of the guest rooms. Evelyn's bed felt wrong. I dreamed of the lullaby, over and over, and of a woman singing it in the nursery while a baby cried in the next room. I woke to the sound of the music box playing downstairs. I hadn't brought it down. I found it in the parlor, lid open, winding down to silence. The house was cold enough for breath to fog. I told myself I'd carried it in my sleep. Nothing else made sense. The next morning, I started going through Evelyn's papers. In a locked drawer of her desk, I found journals, dozens of them, dating back to the 40s, all in the same hand, some Evelyn's, some earlier, my great-grandmother's, my great-great-grandmother's. They told a story. In 1893, my great-great-grandmother, Clara Harrow, lost a child, a daughter, stillborn. The grief broke her. She turned to spiritualism, seances, mediums, anything promising contact with the dead. One medium gave her the music box. It belonged to a mother who lost her child to fever. Play the lullaby at the grave, and the child will hear you. She will come back. Clara played it every night at the tiny headstone in the family plot behind the house. On the 7th night, the baby cried inside the house. Clara ran upstairs. The nursery, empty for months, was occupied. A cradle rocked gently. Inside lay a baby girl, alive, breathing, eyes open. Clara named her Lillian, my great-grandmother. The journals described Lillian as perfect, too perfect. She never cried except when the music box stopped playing. She grew quickly, too quickly. By age 5, she looked 10. By 10, she looked 20, and she never slept. Clara began to fear what she'd brought back. She tried to destroy the music box. It wouldn't break. Fire wouldn't touch it. Hammers dented the table beneath, but left the wood unscathed. Lillian found her trying. That night, Clara disappeared. They found her body a week later in the family plot, lying atop the empty grave of the stillborn child, throat torn open, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut with black thread. Lillian buried her mother herself. Then she took over the house. The journals continued through generations. Every woman in my line inherited the box. Every woman tried to end the bargain. Every woman failed. Some went mad, some killed themselves, some simply vanished. All of them wrote the same thing in their final entries. She is still hungry. She wants what was promised, a daughter for a daughter, forever. I read until the light failed. Then I heard the lullaby again, slow, close, coming from the nursery on the 3rd floor. I hadn't been up there yet. I climbed the stairs. The nursery door was ajar, wallpaper peeled in strips, patterned with faded roses. The cradle stood in the center, old but freshly dusted, rocking gently.
The music box sat on a small table beside it, lid open, winding down to silence. The house was cold enough for breath to fog. I stepped inside. The rocking stopped. A voice, soft, girlish, ancient, spoke from everywhere and nowhere. "Mama." I backed out, slammed the door, ran downstairs and locked myself in the kitchen. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I packed my car to leave. I made it as far as the end of the driveway. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. I tried 3 times. On the 4th, the radio came on by itself. Static. Then the lullaby. Clear. Loud. I left the keys in the ignition and walked back inside. I understood then. The house wouldn't let me go. Not until the debt was paid. I spent the next weeks trying everything. I buried the music box in the family plot. It was back on the dresser the next morning. I smashed it with an axe. The wood healed overnight. I drove it 50 miles and threw it in a lake. It was waiting on my pillow when I returned. I even tried burning the house down. The flames went out as soon as I stepped off the porch. Winter came early that year. Snow piled against the doors. I ran out of food. I lost weight. I stopped fighting. One night, in December, I climbed to the nursery. The cradle was occupied. A little girl sat inside, knees drawn to chest, maybe 7 years old, pale, black hair, eyes too old for her face. She smiled when she saw me. "You came back," she said, voice like the lullaby made flesh. I sat on the floor. "What do you want?" I asked. She tilted her head. What was promised? A mother, forever. I laughed. It sounded like crying. "I don't have children." She crawled out of the cradle, moved wrong, joints bending too far. "You will." She reached for my hand. Her fingers were ice. I didn't pull away. Since then, I've stayed. The house is quiet now. I play the lullaby every night. I rock the cradle. I sing to her. Sometimes I feel it, a fluttering low in my belly. A new life, a new daughter. The debt continues. If you're listening to this recording, you're probably the next one. The lawyer will find you. The letter will come. The keys will fit. You'll tell yourself you'll sell everything. You'll tell yourself you'll destroy the box. You won't, because deep down, you'll hear it. The lullaby, calling you home. And when you open that first lid for the first time, she'll know you're here. Close the box. Run. Burn the letter. Change your name, because the family isn't done yet, and she's still waiting for her mother to come back.